Here's something that will completely flip your understanding of avoidant attachment. Avoidants are actually extremely needy. Yes, you heard that right. The same people who act like they don't need anyone, who pride themselves on their independence, who seem allergic to emotional dependency, are actually some of the neediest people you'll ever encounter. The difference is they've learned to hide their neediness so well that even they don't recognize it anymore. But once you know what to look for, you'll see it everywhere. Avoidants have an insatiable need for control. They need to control the pace of the relationship, the level of intimacy, when they engage and when they withdraw. They need you to be available when they want connection, but respect their space when they don't. They need predictability in your responses while maintaining unpredictability in their own. This isn't strength, it's neediness disguised as independence. They need the relationship to exist entirely on their terms because anything else feels threatening to their carefully constructed sense of self. Despite acting like they don't care about your opinion, avoidants desperately need reassurance that you won't abandon them. But they can't ask for it directly because that would contradict their independent image. Instead, they get this reassurance through your pursuit. When you chase them after they pull away, you're giving them the reassurance they need that you won't leave. When you accommodate their emotional unavailability, you're proving that you'll stick around despite their walls. Your patience becomes their security blanket. Avoidants need enormous amounts of emotional safety, far more than secure people. They need to know they won't be criticized, pressured, or overwhelmed. They need constant assurance that they can express themselves without judgment or that they can withdraw without consequences. This need for safety is so intense that they'll sabotage relationships rather than risk feeling unsafe. They need partners who can read their minds, anticipate their needs, and provide comfort without them having to be vulnerable enough to ask for it. Here's the contradiction. Avoidants simultaneously need space and attention. They need you to give them room to breathe while also being available when they're ready to connect. They need you to not pressure them while also not giving up on them. This creates an impossible dynamic where you're supposed to be emotionally available but not emotionally demanding, present but not intrusive, caring but not overwhelming. They need you to walk a tightrope of perfect distance, close enough to provide security, far enough away to not trigger their fears. Despite their poor communication skills, avoidants desperately need to be understood. They need partners who can see past their walls to their wounded inner child. They need someone who can interpret their actions as love language, even when it doesn't feel loving. They need you to understand that their distance means they care, that their silence isn't rejection, that their walls are protection rather than indifference. They need constant interpretation and translation of their behavior because they can't communicate their needs directly. Ironically, the people who seem most resistant to love actually need it most desperately. Avoidants need love that doesn't waver when they're difficult, doesn't disappear when they're distant, and doesn't require them to perform or pretend to be different than they are. They need partners who will love them through their worst behavior, understand them when they can't understand themselves, and stay committed when they can't show commitment in return. They need love that's stronger than their fear, more persistent than their walls, and more patient than their healing process. The tragedy is that avoidants have learned to see neediness as weakness, so they've buried their own needs so deep that they can't access them anymore. But those needs don't disappear. They just find other ways to express themselves. Their need for control becomes rigidity. Their need for reassurance becomes testing behaviors. Their need for safety becomes emotional walls. Their need for understanding becomes frustration when they're misunderstood. Understanding that avoidants are actually very needy changes everything about how you relate to them. It helps you see that their behavior isn't about not caring. It's about caring so much that they can't handle it in healthy ways. Their independence is actually a sophisticated system for getting their needs met without having to acknowledge they have needs. Their emotional distance is actually a way of staying close without risking the vulnerability that real closeness requires. When you recognize their hidden neediness, you can respond with compassion rather than frustration. You can see their walls as a cry for help rather than a rejection of your love. You can understand that loving an avoidant means learning to meet needs they can't even admit they have. The most independent people are often the most dependent. They're just better at hiding it.